You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
So you invest in a lot of different, countries. Where are you currently seeing opportunity in emerging markets or just other markets?
Well, I don't see many opportunities now because, as you know, most stock markets have been having a good time in recent months. I guess maybe Japan, it could be a continuing to be a good place to invest for a while. China is certainly one of the cheaper markets. I don't know that it's going to go up. The problem when something is cheap is it can stay cheap for a long time and just sit there and be cheap, and do nothing, so you don't make any money. Uzbekistan, of course, is a cheap, new emerging market, but it's small, and there are not many ways to invest in Uzbekistan. But I'm looking every day. Agricultural commodities are probably the cheapest asset class. Bonds are certainly not cheap on a historic basis. Property in most of the world is not cheap on a historic basis. The shares are certainly not. So as I look around, silver is down over 50% from its all-time high. Sugar is down over 50%. These are things I think I mentioned before. It doesn't mean you should buy them, but as I look around the world, the cheapest asset class is commodities.
Yes, agreed. So there is before we even get into commodities, so like there's some geopolitical risk, that I've kind of been wondering about. So I was in the Russian stocks when when those stocks took a big haircut, and I think what I've learned from that is whenever there is government risk of either war or things of that nature, to probably stay away from it. It's different than just a normal market correction or a downturn in the global economy, where there's no tension between nations. But this one was different, and I feel like I would have probably steered clear if I would have thought about the ramifications for the whole Russia-Ukraine thing.
Well, the good news is you learned something. The bad news is you were at the wrong market at the wrong time, but at least you learned from it. So yes, I mean, I was once married and we split and I was unhappy, but I look back on it and thank goodness, and I certainly learned from it. So if you learn from your mistakes, it's a tough way to learn, but at least you learn and you're better in the future. So yes, but be careful because politicians can do strange things. And throughout history, all over the world, politicians have done very, very strange things. I'll tell you quickly, I think it was Paraguay 150 years ago. Paraguay is a very small country in the middle of South America. And the leader of Paraguay went to war against Brazil and Argentina, his neighbors, gigantic countries. I think maybe even Peru as well. And needless to say, he lost. But how could he be so stupid as to go to war with three gigantic neighbors? In the end, there were no men of marriage age left in Paraguay. He got everybody destroyed, including himself, by going to war with three gigantic neighbors. But he did it. You can sit here and say, how could you be? I mean, I wish I could meet the guy so I could say, how could you be so stupid? I wish I could meet Mr. Napoleon because I would like to say to him, how could you be so stupid as to try to march to Moscow with the winter coming? But he did it. Mr. Hitler, I'd love to meet him. I'm not keen on him, but I would love to say to him, how could you be so stupid as to attack Russia? You knew what happened to Mr. Napoleon. You knew what's happened. You knew how you could look at a map and see how big the country is. How could you be so stupid as to invade Russia? He did it. He did it. I'm not saying he was a smart guy. He was clearly a stupid guy. But how could even a stupid guy do something like that?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. So the risk that I mentioned, with Russia, China's pretty cheap right now, and we recently had, I think Janet Yellen went to Taiwan, and then I think we sent some type of military package over to Taiwan, and it seems like the feathers are getting ruffled. And so I'm kind of like, okay, after that experience with Russia, I'm like, yeah, let me kind of be more cautious with this one.
Well, you learned a very good lesson, and you are doing it. I don't know if you're going to get it right or not, but at least you're aware that you got to do something.
Yep. Agreed. All right. So now, just talking about commodities, right? So, we recently saw some news. Niger, I think they stopped exports of uranium to a few different nations. I think France was one of them. We recently saw Britain start to issue licenses, and I believe it's for oil production. And they pissed off some climate enthusiasts. And then we saw Russia pull out of the grain deal to allow Ukraine to export across the Black Sea. So what does this mean for commodities? Hello, everyone. Sorry for the break in action, but please click the link in the description below. This is to the New Orleans Investment Conference. They are going to have some amazing speakers there, such as Jim Rickards, Peter Schiff, George Gammon, Rick Rule, and Danielle DiMartino Booth. This investment conference is put on every year by Brian Lundeen and his team, and they're going to have so many speakers there that can speak to what is happening in the macro environment, what is happening with precious metals, what is happening with natural resources, and many other things so that we can position ourselves to prosper. So thank you all for tuning in to this message. Now enjoy the interview.
Well, as I said before, as I look around the world, the cheapest asset class are commodities, or is commodities. And the things you just mentioned only add to the bullishness for those particular commodities going forward. So if people know about commodities or can learn, they might think about investing in commodities. But I would make the same statement I've made many times to you. Please do not invest in anything unless you yourself know a lot about it. But there is little question in my mind that sugar is cheap on a historic basis, silver and many other things, maybe even oil, if you get it right, if you get the timing right. But just be careful. But all of the things you mentioned add to the supply-demand situation and make it more bullish.
Yeah, agreed. So you mentioned that you were bullish on agriculture a few times. What kind of implications this may have with Russia pulling out of the grain deal?
Russia doing what? Pulling out of the Ukraine deal?
The grain deal between.
The grain deal. Well, obviously, two of the largest grain producers in the world are Russia and Ukraine. It's a pretty simple fact. You can look it up. And if one or both of them are limited in their production or their exports, it's going to have an effect. Yes, Russia apparently has said we're not going to play. And that means there's more pressure on the price, upward pressure on the price of grains. I mean, it's simple fact. Has nothing to do whether we like Russia or don't like Russia. The simple facts are that Russia and Ukraine are historically huge producers of grain, and they may be out of the market for a while.
Yeah. I definitely, I think when I did a lot of research on just the potential food crisis we were going to experience, and many nations were focused on grain security last year. And the Russia-Ukraine situation, and they produce about a third of the world's grains, along with Belarus, and I think it's Belarus. So that was definitely something that was on my radar last year.
Well, but you have to be careful because everything you just said is correct. But if one day you wake up and Russia and Ukraine have peace, the price of all grains are going to collapse that day because everybody knows they're back in the market. So be careful.
Yes,
It's
yes.
not easy.
So manage positions accordingly, and don't invest anything that you're not willing to lose.
Well, I have to leave your investing style to you, but be careful.
Yeah, agree. So uranium. You mentioned that you were bullish on uranium. Nuclear energy is getting a lot of press right now. The price of uranium has been up, I believe, on the week. So what's your take on nuclear going forward?
Well, but the facts are that nuclear energy is cheaper and more efficient than nearly all other kinds of energy. And if you do it right, it's safe. But if you do it wrong, oh my gosh, now, if you do it wrong, you have a huge disaster on your hands. But looking back at history, there have been only, I think, two or a couple of times where we've had disasters with nuclear power. And, one was in the US, 3 Mile Island, 50 odd years ago. Nobody was killed. I'm not saying it was good, but nobody was killed. So even in some of the nuclear accidents, nobody's been killed. I think maybe in Chernobyl in Russia a few decades ago, when they had a problem, probably somebody was killed, a few were killed. The Japanese had a problem. I don't think many, if any, Japanese were killed. So even when we've had accidents or problems with nuclear power, they haven't been disasters. They certainly could be. Oh my gosh, you could have there are nuclear power plants near New York City. If we had an accident, oh my gosh, it could be disaster. But so far, I guess because everybody knows we have to be extremely careful with nuclear power. So far, it has been cheap, efficient, and somewhat safe.
Yes, agreed. So there's the issue with the clean energy, transition is having a sufficient baseload power, and obviously,
power is very clean. Again, if you're safe, if you're careful, it's very, very clean. It's nothing like oil or coal or something. Doesn't emit any emissions that you and I have to worry about. We have to worry about other things, but that's not one of them.
Yeah, yes, definitely. So what's your take on natural gas? Natural gas took a huge dive. It's been down quite a bit. What do you foresee any opportunity there?
Well, natural gas is cleaner, less dirty than most fossil fuels. And yes, it is an opportunity for most of us. And if you know about natural gas, you just pointed out that it took a big dive. As far as I can determine, natural gas has a good future for energy and other things. So it may be an opportunity.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me. Listen to Darryl.
I'm just getting Jim's opinion. Opinion on some of these commodities. You wrote the book Hot Commodities, so we got to talk about the ones that are going to potentially be hot, right? So the metals. Palladium's been very cheap. What's your take on palladium?
Well, all I know is that Darryl Thomas told me that palladium's cheap. It's very cheap. And I can look at the record and I can see that it is very cheap on a historic basis. So it's probably an opportunity. The only, I guess, a risk, electric cars, which are cleaner than gasoline engine cars. I guess electric cars are a threat to palladium. I'm just thinking out loud. I haven't thought of this before. But I guess that's one reason palladium is down, because if we're going to have electric cars, they're not as dirty as gasoline cars. So maybe that's why palladium is down. But that's all I know, and I'm speaking off the top of my head.
Yep. Yeah, because I believe I missed the rhodium train. A friend of mine, Maurice Jackson, he was on rhodium earlier, and I wasn't I wasn't educated enough to know about rhodium, but I missed that train, and then so I'm just kind of looking at like, okay, is palladium an opportunity or what? Platinum seems fairly cheap right now. It's been down, having a hard time, staying up. What's your take on platinum?
Well, platinum and palladium, as far as I know, are used in, what do they call those things that clean the emissions from cars?
Catalytic converters.
What?
The catalytic converter.
Yeah, catalytic converters. And so that would probably be why they are under pressure now, because apparently we're going to have electric cars. Electric cars, I presume, do not need palladium and platinum. And that's a huge source of demand for both of those metals. So do some homework. If they're down, there may be opportunities. But if we are going to have electric cars, there may be opportunities on the downside. And I don't know.
Yep, agree. Okay, yep.
I had never thought about this before in my life until just now speaking to you, Daryl.
Gotcha. So I recently learned about vanadium, and I believe it's an alternative to lithium. So that's one that I'm looking at. I don't know if you know much about it, but I've been kind of just doing some back end research on it. There isn't a lot of stocks that focus on vanadium, but I know China produces a lot of it, and Russia produces. I think they produce about 75% of it. And so, when it comes to battery storage and things of that nature, I think that may be an opportunity there.
Well, you already know more than I know. I know a little bit because I've read a little bit, but you clearly know more than I know. So if it's an opportunity, you let us know.
All right, I will do that. So as we transition out of commodities, so obviously gold and silver are ones that you and I both hold. I hold it for insurance. I assume you hold it for insurance against any type of economic collapse risk or whatnot. It's money. So the BRICS nations, there's a lot of talk about the BRICS nation potentially linking their currency to gold. What's your take on how this may impact the supply of gold or the price of gold?
Well, if they do, you better own more gold, because gold will be more than just an insurance policy at that point. Gold will be a money-making opportunity, because if major countries in the world are going to start having gold in their currency, reserves or anything, it will increase the demand. So I'm glad I own some gold. And if that happens, I'll be late, but still I'll probably buy more as it goes up. I own gold, I own silver, and gold has been used as money, a money system, basic money system many times in history, and silver. When the U.S. was founded, we were founded on a silver standard, the Act of 1792. Basically, we were a silver-backed currency, and we were for another 100 years or so when we went to gold again. So gold and silver have been used many times for money. Remember Jesus Christ, he was sold for 30 pieces of silver. He wasn't sold for 30 pieces of gold, because in that whole part of the world, for many, many decades, silver was the money basis and the money system. So gold and silver have been used often throughout history and will be again, probably. They've never lasted because it presents problems. A problem with gold or silver, if backing your currency, is it requires discipline. It imposes discipline on politicians. Well, politicians don't like discipline. They want to be able to buy as many votes as they can. And if they have discipline imposed on them from the outside, they don't like it. So they've always changed when we've had a gold-based system or a silver-based system. The politicians have always changed it eventually, but we might try it again. Things are getting bad. The U.S. dollars. The U.S. is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. I'm not the only person who knows that. And so many people are worried, including me. And the U.S. and Washington is weaponizing the U.S. dollar. And a lot of people don't like that because, in theory, the world's reserve currency or the world's medium of exchange is supposed to be neutral. Anybody can use it for anything. That's changing, Gerald. Washington, if they don't like you, they put sanctions on you, they take the money away from you, or they say you can't use it. So many people are saying, wait a minute, we got to find something else, even our friends, because they don't like that approach in Washington.
Do you think this is that approach is similar to what could happen with the average American or person when they transition to CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies?
Well, it's not quite the same kind of thing. We are transferring, or we're going to change, we are changing to digital currency. Governments like it because it's simple, it's cheap, they don't have to print it, they don't have to transport it, they don't have to guard it in the same way. So it's coming, whether we like it or not. It's already here in China. You can't take a taxi in China with money. You have to use your computer money. They're ahead of us, but everybody's working on it, including the U.S. So it will come, and politicians love it for the reasons I mentioned, but mainly because they know everything you do. They're going to call you up one day and say, Daryl, you've been drinking too much coffee this month. Stop drinking so much coffee, whatever it is. Been watching too many baseball games or something. So they love it. I don't, but they love it. But it's coming. It's definitely coming. But it's not the same kind of transition that going to gold or silver would be, in my view, because it is all electronic. And people who had gold 100 years ago didn't know about electronics. So it's coming, but it'll be a different kind of transition. A risk, of course, to the world is, or a complication is, if we have an electrical outlet closing down, a year or two ago, Texas had to close down its electricity for 4 or 5 days. Well, if that happens, you go to the store and you say, I want to buy some bread, but my computer's not working. The storekeeper is going to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Thomas, I got to have money. I can't just give you bread with no money. So it will be a problem for all of us that I don't know how the world is going to deal with it if and when we have huge storms or wars or something else that closes down the electrical system.
Yeah. And I was thinking of it, in terms of the West didn't like what Russia did with Ukraine, and so they took them off SWIFT. And so I'm wondering, if, which you answered this, if, when CBDCs come out and they don't like what we do, or, us buying coffee or whatnot, whether they will implement some type of control systems. It was kind of interesting. So I logged on my Facebook. I had got a Facebook strike before. And I had a friend who was posting on how to monetize your videos on Facebook and such. So I was like, okay, yeah, I get quite a bit of views on Facebook, so let me go try that. I go try that, and then they have this strike from 2 years ago. They're like, hey, you can't, monetize your videos because you have this strike against you. And so, it was kind of interesting.
Well, you see what I mean? And we're not talking about something major, at least as far as Washington is concerned, but it is something that they don't like. Oh my gosh. And then we're not, as I say, and if there are an electricity crisis or something like that, no, there are many conceivable and potential problems that right now, if you have $1 bill in your pocket, you can go down to the store and buy some bread. But if everything is on the internet or on your computer, who knows? I don't know what complications may happen and what we will do about it.
Yep. So there were multiple countries that have been trying to join the BRICS. The BRICS represent majority of the world's population. And so we've seen throughout history just nations rise, nations fall. The West is the wealthiest out of, I don't know the percentages, but the BRICS, they make up at least half the world's population. Do you think this is like the transition to a longer term trend of world power shifting?
Well, you already said it. Throughout history, power has shifted from country X to country Y or countries. So, and it's happening again. It's always happened. The strange thing, Darryl, would be if it didn't happen. If we didn't have a transition from the U.S. now to somebody else. Doesn't happen. It's not going to happen this summer. Don't worry. I hope it doesn't happen this summer, but it will certainly happen. It is happening. And I mean, the West has gigantic debts, whether we like it or not. And the debts are building up every day, every week. And throughout history, that has led to transition, been part of transition. So it's happening again, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, agreed. So it's helpful for us to understand history and prepare ourselves with, obviously Jim talks about owning gold and silver. I'm a silver and a gold bug as well. So be sure to have money outside of the system. However you do that, this isn't financial advice. Thank you, Jim.
The most important lesson of history is that most people do not learn the lessons of history. If they know history, they ignore. I mean, Donald Trump, he acted like he knew history, but he said he ignored it. He said, I'm smarter than history. I don't have to pay attention to history. Well, I know I'm not smarter than history.
Yep, agreed. Well, thank you, Jim, for coming on and blessing us with your time and everything. I appreciate your wisdom and looking forward to our next chat.
Thank you, Darryl. It's been fun as always. I look forward to next time too. Be careful.
All right, will do.
Hope we're all careful. Thank you. Bye-bye.